Hello, everyone, and welcome to the opening episode of season two of the Pulse Pod. 2025-2026 is just about underway with the fixture list coming out as of yesterday. We're recording this on the Thursday, the 10th, and the fixtures came out on Wednesday, the 9th. Some interesting fixtures in there. We play every team once at home and once away, as the old saying goes. But before we get into that, we have two men with me who know all about the club and were on the podcast last season in Adam and Ellis. Adam, you first. It's been a long time, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. Am I ready to get going again? Truthfully, I don't have a clue, but here we are.
Indeed. And Ellis, you as well. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thank you very much. I mean, another season of this club is going to take it out of me, but I'm ready to go with it.
Absolutely. And it's been a very long 2 months. A lot has happened in and out of the club. Obviously, we start in May with the, let's say, numerous club statements and the public tug of war. In June, we had a change of manager, somewhat controversially. I think a lot of people would agree. And we've had a few signings and a few outgoings, more than a few outgoings, I think it's fair to say as well. And we will try and cover as much of that as we can over however long we get to recording today. And just a quick word on the personal. It's been a long time since we did an episode. I did think in May when we did our season review and our rewards and such there, it'd be good to have a little break. It's the end of season, nothing much will happen. And obviously, look what then happened. So, it might not be worth doing that again next year if we get to that bit. There was also the point of me applying potentially for the media officer job at the club. So, you don't really want to jeopardise anything from that end. Unfortunately, didn't go as I hoped, as we have all seen. Dom Aberdeen's been appointed, and good luck to the lad. I have nothing against him professionally or personally for that point of view. A little bit disappointed and upset. There was no communication from the club in the process. I applied, I think, 24 hours after the post was put up advertising the job. It expired on the 16th of June. I sent two further inquiring emails after the deadline just to inquire how things were going, and nothing. There was nothing forthcoming, and I found out over Twitter, which is upsetting and unfortunate. And if anyone from the club does fancy getting in touch, eventually do feel free. I mean, I did volunteer to, help out with the media at the end of May because I knew that Josh had left and I thought people may need a bit of a hand. But, bygones be bygones and all of that. And hopefully we'll have a successful season coming up. Now, gentlemen, we'll start in May. It was a low-key end to the season because we didn't know what was going to happen following the final day. Obviously, Raj Singh had previously said he'd stop funding after the end of the day. And Adam, we'll come to you first. Numerous club statements, a tug-of-war in public, and then there was what we'll now call the infamous vote, the 63% who voted for Raj Singh to return to the club. And how did it feel from your end through that entire period, just that sort of 2 week period where it just felt like there was a huge tug of war in public, and at the end of the day, Raj has returned to the post?
And let's not forget as well, an interview with Paul Frost that aired a month and a half after the season finished, which, by
That's
the way,
very true. Yep, I forgot about that one.
which was an absolute disaster in typical Singh fashion. Never seen so much propaganda, if that's one for a better way of saying it. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy 2 months it's been. Everything that we thought was going to happen following the Forest Green game didn't happen. I think we all thought after a few weeks the takeover would happen, Singh would walk out the door, and it would welcome a new era at the club. Would welcome an exciting summer at Hartlepool United, and it just hasn't happened. Communication's been to a minimum. Nothing significant in probably over 2 months now since last season finished. And we're no further forward to understanding what the situation is, bar gossip and bar what we read on social media, which obviously you can only take with a pinch of salt. But I'm surprised in one sense, but then not surprised in another. I kind of felt like when Raj, first announced that he was resigning from his chairmanship, withdrawing funding after the Forest Green game, I thought, you know what, that feels final. That feels like something for me that you can't come back from. But then, in typical Raj Singh fashion, he comes back from it, as he does. But I just don't understand what the end game is. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've had offers there. Seemingly, from what we understand, there's been legitimate offers on the table, not time wasters, and here we are now going into another season, 4 weeks' time from now, under the current ownership. It's just bizarre. So many questions, and as ever, not enough answers.
Absolutely. And Ellis, on to you. Kieran Maguire, a financial expert. He's done a lot of interviews, both nationally and locally. He's got that podcast as well, which the name escapes me at the moment. I think it's The Price of Football, if I remember rightly. But he did a segment on Hartlepool United and stated that the club was worth a pound, which I think a lot of fans may well agree with. We don't own the ground. We don't have that much in the way of assets. And looking back on that, and as we've both stated, the wider situation in general, how did you feel at the end of May?
I think season finished. There was seemed like what was credible takeover rumors going around. So I was relatively, I'd say excited for the new season because it did, although it's Raj and you can never really until that deal was signed off and it had been announced, anything could have changed. But I did have a feeling that something was going to happen. But since the vote and that full debacle of all the statements and the back and forth, I think it's clear he's not going anywhere. And I think this is just a game at the end of the day. He was scaremongering loads of fans with that vote and the fear of them not having a club. And that's the only reason the vote has ended up at 63% yes.
That 63 will live long in the memory for everyone associated with the club. I think it's basically become the butt of a running joke, for better or for worse, in terms of, 63% thought this and, oh, well, unfortunately, 63% thought that. And I mean, I was at the charity cricket game on Sunday, as people will have attended and seen my utter lack of bowling skills, and hopefully it's been wiped from everyone's memory by now. But there was a few bits in there about 63%, and I'd say it was a cracking day, and it's slightly been overshadowed by, you know, everything else that's been going on. But it was a very good day, and if anyone does want to support the Roy Simpson MBE Foundation, I need to get that right because I said OBE last time and I gave them a bit of a promotion from that sense. If anyone wants to support them, do some excellent work with aspiring cricketers in the Northeast. But going back to the situation at hand, we move on to June. And June brought rumours of a new manager in Graham Coughlin. It didn't quite pan out. And then it brought around the actual sacking of Anthony Limbrick and the actual appointment of Simon Grayson, which, Ellis, was a slightly controversial appointment at the time. Not necessarily for Simon Grayson, but for the treatment of Anthony Limbrick. Whether you thought he should have stayed on or not, it seemed like a very strange way to treat a manager.
If you want to sack a manager, you sack them at the end of the season. You don't sack them a month after the season's finished and lead them on and have them thinking they're going to be winning the job. I wouldn't have kept Limbrick. I think we were very, very poor at the end of the season and there was a lot of baffling decisions. And without Cleary, we could have potentially got properly pulled into a relegation battle, but obviously we had the best player in the league. So I wasn't necessarily bothered about him going. And I think you could see he had the desire to do well, and he was a decent bloke, and he deserved at least the credibility to not get to find out he's losing his job through rumours in the media and them talking to other managers behind his back. And then Grayson, it's just I think although wouldn't have kept Limbrick, I also wouldn't have appointed Grayson. I think yes, he might have a good track record, but his last promotion was in 2015. It's like a different era of football. He's never managed at the level before, and he's just on a downward spiral in his career. If you're looking at making an appointment, you want to appoint someone who's on the way up, not was formerly Championship manager and now the National League manager.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a nice fella. I mean, I've watched the recent interview with him, and he does seem like a nice fella. You've seen the reports. I don't know if either of you were at the game on Tuesday because I was working, I couldn't get there. But the general media reaction from the likes of Robbie Stelling and Danny, the radio, etc. He seems like a genuine, approachable man. Hopefully, it does go well for him because if it goes well for him, it goes well for the club as well. Adam, how did you feel at the time when? Because it was a weird one, wasn't it? Because the rumours came out about Graham Coughlin, and then Radio Lincolnshire sort of provided the credence and said that we have approached him and it's been rebuffed by the club. as you would expect, because he'd done an excellent job for Boston. There's no reason for them to let him go. And then, as I say, it was a whirlwind. I think it was a Thursday, if I remember rightly, when the sacking and the appointment came about.
Yeah, there was rumours for a while, wasn't there? I mean, I first saw it on Twitter. I think it was at Peter O'Rourke tweeted saying Hartlepool have approached Boston manager
Yeah, that's
Graham.
right, I think.
Flynn. Yeah, yeah. So I first looked at that and I thought, okay, if there is going to be an incoming takeover, then I can kind of understand it. New faces maybe want to bring in their own manager. I respect it. Would I have got rid of Limbrick? Probably not. I would like to have saw him get back in the summer. I would like to have saw him had an opportunity to have his own stamp on the team. I understand firmly what people have said, obviously from last season, the decision making. There is obviously, legitimate question marks over him, but still, I would like to have saw him at the helm next year. But as ever, it's not so much the fact that he's gone; it's the manner of it. We've seen things like this in the past with Kevin Phillips. You stay and then you're not staying. You look at Spike Lee getting sacked before the last home game of the season. So it was shocking treatment. The timing was bizarre, but then I was quite starstruck when I saw Simon Grayson. I wasn't expecting that name. Of all the names that were being touted and of all the names that you possibly could have come up with, I think was it Millington getting rumoured at the time? The
Yeah, obviously,
ex-Halifax
he'd not
manager.
long left
Yeah, it was
Halifax,
Millington.
and I think he was heavily rumoured at the time.
Yeah, so obviously you have all this stuff going through your mind of who you could expect to come in, and then obviously it's Grayson, which again the jury's out. Obviously, if you go back 20 odd year ago, good manager, promotions, did well at Leeds, well respected, but obviously, Ellis has made valid points there. Last promotion 10 year ago, 15 year ago, whatever it was, 2015, 10 year ago. Um, Being out in India, Nepal for the last 5 years or so. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. I'm just hoping that he can break the curve. I'm hoping that not only can we start the season with him in 4 weeks' time, hopefully he ends the season at Hartlepool United. But obviously that's not a given at Hartlepool. So it is very much a game at a time and see what happens. But fingers crossed, hopefully, recruitment's been okay, so hopefully he can do an okayish job.
Lovely. And moving on to, let's say, the annual turnover of the squad, which seems to happen every year, as it does a lot at non-league level, because there's a lot of one-year deals, potentially two-year deals running out. And we've seen quite a few players leave, quite a few significant players leave in the form of Manny Desiree. We'll start with recently went to Rochdale alongside his busy mate Anthony Mancini, and it does feel like a bit of a loss to the team, as you would expect from someone who scored the amount of goals he scored over the last 2 years, and even in an under par season, which you could call this season based on what he did the previous season. But he still scored a lot of goals. He's still by far our top scorer, and Adam, it just seems like a lot of goals to replace.
Yeah, that one hurts. I mean, I don't know about you guys, I don't know about anyone else, but I kind of expected it. He had 5, 6 months to sign a contract extension. It was being rumoured for a while. Rob Law, every time he was asked, it was talks are progressing, talks are progressing. You get to the end of the season, then you get to like the last day of June where the contracts are going to expire. When you get to that point, what's going to come next, don't you? I mean, it's more the fact that not only is he's left to go to a fellow National League playoff rival for free. That's just like I think it's just really poor business from Poe's point of view. You'd expect Joe to walk out the door as well. I mean, look, we've got Danny Johnson in. I think we knew what we were doing, announcing him on the same day, trying to damage the blow. I think. Look, I think if we can play in a way that benefits Johnson, then I think Johnson there has the ability to output good numbers. Will he? I don't know. I mean, hopefully he stays fit, stays sharp, and he can do a good job. But I was really, really good to see Manny D leave.
Yes, and obviously Mancini made the journey across the Pennines first to Rochdale. Ellis, can you see? I mean, it depends on Mancini staying fit. We know that he's virtually made of glass, unfortunately, despite his talent. But can you see the two of them linking up to effect at Rochdale?
Well, I can imagine, like you say, it's all in if Mancini stays fit. I know I can bet any amount of money Manny D will score goals this season at Rochdale because they create such a high magnitude of chances. And that, as we both all know, Manny D is one of the best strikers in this league. So there's no question over how he'll do, but it will be dependent on if Mancini can stay fit. But I do want to say I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed fitter at Rochdale than he did at Pools, as they have a lot more depth in that 10 position and they aren't going to be relying on him to be fit every single week. While back in the Boston game, you could see from about the 60th minute, Mancini needed to come off, and we kept him on. I don't know until when, but he stayed on way too long and got injured again. And I think we had such an over reliance on him to be constantly be fit. So I think going into an environment where he's not, they don't need him to be like the star man every week, he might get some more games out of him.
Yeah, valid point. I mean, the, that Boston game you mentioned, again, brilliant result there. 4-1, excellent performance. Probably one of our best performances of the season. But you could see at that point, despite the influence he was clearly having on the game, he was starting to become very laboured, shall we say. He was struggling, and it just felt like one of those moments where he hadn't come back from injury that long. He just needed to ease him back in and hope that he'd be able to build up his match fitness, and he was pushed a bit too far, unfortunately. And as you say, if he can be rotated in and out of that Rochdale squad, he may well have a lot more of an impact. And good luck to him, of course. He's been, when he has played, a standout player for us. He's probably one of the best players in the division when he's completely fit. And good luck to him there. On to another servant of the club in David Ferguson, who has left for Gateshead, just up the road. And I'm sure we'll come up against him later on in the season. And Ellis, is it fair to say that he hasn't been as good in recent years as he was when he first joined? But I mean, in my opinion, I think he still could have played a part in the squad. I wouldn't have had him starting every week, but I think if he'd been available to rotate in off the bench, even just to provide a bit of experience in the squad.
I think what you've got with Ferguson is first and first what you think of him as a footballer. He's a decent person who cares deeply about the club, and he's been around the club when we've been successful and when we've been poor. And I think having characters like that, especially in times like it currently is at Pools, it's what you need. But then as a player, I think he's shown under, I'd say the key times I think he's been good since Chalner left was under Phillips and under Limbrick at left centre back. And I think that's down to him when he's actually used effectively and he's got decent defenders around him, not Ewan Murray and Alex Lacey, then he can be a decent left back. Not spectacular. Has a lot of, he is prone to a defensive error, but I would have still kept him around. And I just like, I don't feel like you can get rid of someone who cares so deeply about the club when it is how it is right now.
Well, firstly, you mentioned you and Murray and Alex Lacey. I think anyone who's listening has just automatically shivered for obvious reasons. And secondly, he did say in his statement online, a lovely statement as well, must be said. He did say that he thought that he'd retire at the club, which shows how much he does care about the club. And unfortunately, for whatever reason that is, whether it be wages, whether it be promise of playing time, or whether it be just because he wasn't in the club's plans, it just hasn't quite worked out from that way.
Yeah, I think it seems to me that it read as if the club hadn't actually got in contact with him, which that in itself, again, like we've said with Limbrick, you have to start treating staff like people. Like it's not a care home. You can't just disregard someone after the service. You need to respect them as human beings, and like it doesn't matter what you think of them as a footballer. You can't say you're going to offer him a contract and then leave him waiting around. He's got a family to look after, and it's a job at the end of the day.
So Adam, unfortunately, he has left the club, whether that be by design from the club, whether that be because of the contract offer not being good enough. He said in a very well-worded statement that he thought he would retire at the club and it hasn't come to fruition. And you thought, would he been better suited to staying at the club even in a squad capacity? I don't know if you think he may well have been able to start still, but your thoughts on that?
Truthfully, he was one of the players I would have probably pushed to leave this summer. I kind of feel like we'd seen the best of him. You know, you go back to the days of Chalner, probably a part of one of the best fullback combinations we'll ever see, him and Sterry. But the last few years, I think he's regressed. He's gradually declined. I mean, he's at that age now, he's over 30, so it's at that point in his career where he's going to start gradually declining. But I wasn't too bothered. I thought if he stayed, he stayed. If he went, he went. And again, I think it's a bit like what Ellis said. I think we need to start. It's all right trying to get things right on the pitch, but I think we need to start getting things right off the pitch as well. Do you know what I mean? Treating people with respect that they deserve. Players, coaching staff, club staff, everyone. Do you know what I mean? it is very much bizarre how we go about business. Seemingly offered a contract, new manager comes in, and then seemingly I get the impression that Grayson didn't want him, and it's a case of, well, you're free to obviously leave the club and pursue new opportunities. So he's up at Gateshead. I'd like to think that we do bring in a left back or a left wing back at some point. But yeah, I don't really have too much in the way of a complaint against this. Wish him all the best, and that's all I can really say.
Absolutely fair enough. And of the retained list that we had at the end of May, is there anyone in particular that you think we might have kept? We've got the likes of just off the top of my head, we've got Dan Dodds, for example, who has since left to join South Shields. There aren't too many that come to mind specifically, I don't think, in terms of keeping. Perhaps we could have kept Gary Medina as an option, given that Manny D has left. Maybe it's just as an alternative from in the forward line, but it doesn't feel like there's too many that we could have kept, does there?
No, I think the one I know he left on his own accord. It was for his own personal reasons, but the one person, and I can't believe I'm saying this, would have been
Sass,
Billy Sass
Sass
Davies.
Davies. Yeah.
I think towards the end of last season, I thought he played all right. Went under the radar quite a bit with his performances. I think he would have been good even in his squad depth. Do you know what I mean? I'm not necessarily saying a starter every week, but I certainly would have kept Billy Sass Davies. I wouldn't have like ushered him out of the door type thing. Medine, yeah, maybe potentially. But no, I think a lot of the players who have left, I've got no complaint. Dodds, respectfully, he was great when he first joined, but then hasn't been the same since the Chesterfield game. I think he's lost a yard or two of pace, and he's a shadow of the player that we signed. And I'm really struggling to think of the other players who left. But no, I don't have too much in the way of a complaint.
Yeah, you've got players such as Greg Sloggett, Kieran Wallace, Luke Waterfall, Manny Honorise, Joel Dixon, a couple of youngsters there, Max Story, Jack Robinson, and Josh Masfari as well, potentially the goalkeeper. I mean, there was a bit of a discord there, wasn't there, Ellis, where he said, sorry, I start with the club. The club said that they couldn't come to an agreement or something of that nature. It was sort of he's departed to seek other opportunities. But then I believe it was his dad who commented, wasn't it, saying he'd never been offered a contract at
Yeah,
all,
I
which
mean,
was a very strange. It's a strange thing for the club to say, and it's a strange thing for his dad to say. One of them clearly isn't true.
yeah, well, I mean, going back to what I said about Ferguson, you have to start treating people like people. It's like at the end of the day, Materazzi, did he do very well on loan at Redcar? Yes. Should they have kept him? Yes. But am I going to lose any sleep over keep? Who probably would have been our backup next season. No, it's like it is what it is. It's not. I think the way they've treated him's not right, but there's millions of young keepers out there, and I'd like to think our number one would be better than someone who's only been playing on loan at Redcar last year.
I think it would be fair to say, though, that we do need to recruit in that area because I don't think Adam Smith is going to be the long-term solution in that position.
Yeah, I agree. I think. Well, one, I just don't agree with having. You can't have your number one keeper be your coach. That just isn't right in general. But I also don't think he was very poor at points last season, and I think for such an important position, you want someone who you can rely on. And I mean, who is that? I'm not really sure, but I don't think it's Smith.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, we were linked with Pete Jameson at one point, weren't we, to come back and obviously I mean, it was a strange one, wasn't it? Because a lot of people really didn't want him back. Darlington fans seem to think that he's God's gift to the goalkeeping position. But then he's done like a weird signing where he signed for Gateshead but gone back to Darlington, even though he's still coaching at Gateshead. It's a very strange arrangement.
Yeah, it's very strange. I think it's because Darlow are part time, so he can
Yeah.
coach at Gated on his off days and whatnot. But I mean, I'm very, very, very glad we didn't sign Jameson back because
I agree.
Jameson and Smith are the exact same sort of keeper to me. They're just bog standard. They're not really great at anything. They're solid enough. They'll do the basic stuff like to an okay standard, but that's all they'll do. I think your job for your goalkeepers, you want them to win your points. You want them when you're not at your best and you're getting battered off York or whatever. You want them to make a few saves and be the difference between you getting beaten and drawn or whatever. And Smith and Jameson don't offer that. 'Cause as soon as there's a half decent shot that requires some athletic ability, it'll go in.
Yeah, do you remember the one that sort of trickled underneath him?
Smith or Jameson.
Jameson.
But
When he
every
was
shot,
here, I can't remember who it was against, but it was
I think
like
it was every shot
a
he
really
played.
soft shot that trickled through the box and just trickled underneath him.
I think it was against
Vaguely.
Woken.
Who was it?
Was it Woken? Did they go? Did they wrong foot him?
Yeah, like he was
Yeah, it was
starting to go to
Woken.
his right, I think. It was at the rink end and he just sort of like went
Yeah,
down in stages and it just trickled underneath him.
it was against Darren Sarll's Woken.
Of course it was. Sounds about right, hey, honestly. But going back to the returns, I mean, you've got to give some credit to the club when they do get something right. And I think the major thing that they've got right this off season, in and amongst all of the things we can criticise, is the fact that Nathan Sheringham has signed a 2 year contract. In my personal opinion, you could give the player of the season to Tom Parks as well because he was outstanding, and we did very well mid-season in tying him down quite quickly. But the 2 year contract for Nathan Sheringham, Adam, come to you first. Outstanding business from the club.
Mega, mega business. I mean, that would have been another huge loss. Like you rightfully said, he was up there for player of the season, and there was probably only two players in that conversation. You could tell by the comments. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like a new signing on it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? Just really good.
Yeah, Ellis. I mean, his partnership with Jamie Miley, it's not something we've seen, spectacular results from so far, but it is something that can be built on for next season, the season beyond. If they stay together as the two with, let's say, Brad Walker coming in, we'll come on to the new signing shortly, but let's say with someone like Brad Walker anchoring the midfield, those two could potentially form a very good partnership going forward.
I think they've got. I think that both of each other's attributes complement each other because much as Sharon's great, he's not the most cultured in possession. He does the basics well enough, but he's not overly adventurous and progressive. And I think Miley's the opposite. He's not great out of possession, but he will. He's quite creative from deep and he can tick the game over. And I think they both work hard and they complement each other's attributes quite nicely. I wouldn't like to see them play Walker in there with them. I think that's three midfielders what of a similar ilk when none of them are like gonna get forward and truly contribute. But I think Miley and Sharon could quite decent to sit in front of a back five or a four.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got Jack Hunter, haven't we? I think he can play the defensive midfield position potentially. He started quite well last season. Unfortunately, had that sort of medium term injury for a few months, 4 months or so, that kept him out. But he could potentially do that. We could look to obviously bolster that area as well. And we'll move on to the new signings because we've mentioned Brad Walker already, so it flows quite well into that. We start with Brad Walker because he was the first one across the door. Ellis, you have produced some rather in-depth, detailed, excellent dives into the new signings for everyone to read because certainly for the likes of Jay Ben, Reece McNally, that we haven't really seen that much of, it's very helpful information there. So we'll start with Brad Walker, who a lot of fans will obviously know from his first spell at the club. He's been to Tranmere since League Two. He's had that spell. Injury issues may be a concern. But just as a summary, is it a good fit, do you think? And whereabouts do you see him fitting into the side?
Well, as a footballer, purely as a footballer, Brad Walker's not a bad player. At the end of the day, he's if you read Tranmere fans' opinions or Port Vale fans' opinions, they all rate him relatively highly. He's tidy enough in possession. He's versatile. He's of a good age. He's got decent EFL experience, and obviously he's from up here. So there's a desire to be at the club, and he's obviously got previous at the club. So I think purely as a footballer, he's a decent fit. I think he'd probably be covering midfield and also maybe see him slotting into the back three because that's where he's played quite a bit of Tranmere and Port Vale. But I think it was 8 games he played last season. I think it's 40 games over the last three. I just don't want us to be carrying passengers who are going to be like, if we're going to, if what I don't understand is why we sign injury-prone players, but then we're getting rid of Mancini. If you're not bothered about carrying an injury-prone player or two, keep Mancini, who can be the best player in the league in the 15 games you get out of him.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I'm not entirely sure of Brad Walker's injury record. Is he as injury prone as Mancini? Has he missed as many games as Mancini?
If anything, I think he's missed more. He
Oof.
played less games last season than Mancini did.
That's quite impressive considering how much Mancini was out.
Over the last, I'll tell you. So last season he played 8 games.
8.
The season before he played 28 the season before, to be fair to him.
That's not
And
that's not
the
terrible.
season before that he played 4.
Oof.
So 40 games in 3 years.
Yeah, that's not brilliant. for as a yeah. I mean, we can only hope. I mean, if he's fully fit now, potentially, like you get him back up to match fitness. Did he? He played on Tuesday, didn't he?
Yeah. One thing I do want to comment on about the injury record is I spoke to a few Tranmere fans, and they said at the start of last season, not their media department, their physio department had made a mistake and rushed him back quickly. And then,
Ah,
so last season, it was like, it wasn't necessarily a case of him being injury prone. He'd been,
Mistreated.
yeah, mistreated.
so Danny, if you're listening, please don't do that. Please don't do that because we could do with I mean, to be fair, it just reminds me of the John Askey season. And welcome back, John Askey, by the way. True role. We'll get onto the fixture lists in a bit, but welcome back to the National League. But it reminds me of that season where everyone was dropping like flies, no matter what the reason for that was. Just felt like every player was injured at a certain point, and John Askey himself said it's the worst I've ever seen it in terms of injuries in my entire career. But hopefully Brad Walker can overcome that. And like I say, Danny, please don't do him wrong, and hopefully he'll provide a good base for the midfield if and when he's needed. So moving on to the second signing, two signings in a day, we were very well treated, and Reece McNally arrived, having been linked with Carlisle, and it's always impressive to get one over on Carlisle, considering they're obviously one of the big heads of the division. They came down last season and they've been splashing the cash to get back up. So again, Ellis, if you'd like to take it away, Kidderminster fans do speak very highly of him. That was evident when he left Kidderminster for Pulls, and hopefully he can slot inside the centre back role. And I'm assuming form a partnership with Tom Parks.
Well, I think signings like McNally, the signings we haven't had enough of, like at all over recent years. I think before you'd actually look at his abilities as a footballer, he's 24. We always seem to sign players pushing at the 30s. He's on his way up. He's been playing the National League North. He's had a positive previous season, not on the way down like the likes of Walker and that are. And I think he's a good athlete, which I think we haven't had enough of. Our teams have been built on just like all the slower players, and you need to do well at this level. If you look at Barnard's team last year, their core, their squad were all like 6 foot plus athletic, and it's like if you have a team full of athletes, you can do well no matter. It gives you a basis to work with, no matter how good the squad is, in like all in all. And then as a footballer, I think he's obviously a good player, and I think he'll fit in well into the squad. I imagine it'll be a back three, so I think it'll be Parks, him at right centre back, and I'm guessing we're going to be in the market for a new left centre back.
Yeah, I mean, from the clips that I saw on your thread, I think it was your thread, of him basically taking the ball and striding forward as well as an overlapping centre back. We haven't really had a lot of that recently.
Yeah, we definitely haven't. And I think if you plan to play a back five, as I think we've seen it with Ferguson when he played there last season at left centre back, where he got a bit of forward and he was like putting balls in the box and supporting the wing backs and whatnot. And I think that's what you need. You need your wide centre backs to be good enough in possession when they can carry the ball forward.
Absolutely. And Adam, we're not leaving you behind here. So for the first two signings there, Walker and McNally, it's fairly positive, certainly in the end of McNally. Walker, we can try and get over his injury record, but just as a summary on the first two.
Yeah, obviously I can't really offer much on McNally. Obviously I've read all of Ellis's stuff. I've read stuff on Twitter, Facebook. Sounds very positive. Very excited to see him get um, stuck into it all. Walker, I think the jury's very much out. Very much out. I think on paper could well be a good sign if he can stay fit, stay sharp. Then, you know, I remember from his first stint, he always had the ability. He was a good talent. I always remember that goal away at Southend. I think it was a Tuesday night, that volley. Did he win an AFL award as well? Again, an apprentice award? Something like that.
Potentially.
Yeah, something like that rings a bell. But no, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I seen him on Tuesday night after the first half. I mean, he was pagged, absolutely pagged. So he does look quite a way off full match fitness, but we'll have to just wait and see.
Well, to be fair, that's what the pre-season friendlies are for, get people up to match fitness
Exactly.
and, giving them 45 minutes to go every time and hopefully building up to, I think the last game, South Shields, isn't it? I think if I remember
Yeah.
rightly at home. So if that's the game where potentially he can play like, say, 70, 75 minutes, and see where he does there. And moving on to Mr. Ben Ellis. J. Ben dropping down from Lincoln to join Pools. A move that, firstly, no one saw coming. There wasn't even any leaks, any rumours around him. No one thought this would happen. And secondly, it's a big drop for him. And from a lot of the comments that we were seeing from people either in the know or just expecting otherwise, they thought he might get a League Two side, a top end National League side. So it does feel like a bit of a coup that we've managed to get him in.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, back in 23-24, he had a really, really good season in the National League at Solihull, where he was one of the best fullbacks in the league. And he obviously went on, he got a loan at Bradford last season, where although he probably didn't play as much as he liked to, due to the quality they already had it right back in Brad Holiday, I think there were he still contributed in a way. I think he played 20 odd games in a side that at the end of the day got promoted to League One. So I assumed he probably would have ended up at Barrow with Andy Wing, so, but like a mid to lower end League Two team. So to get him in the National League does seem like a bit of a coup, and I think he's a good fit to if we plan to play a back five. I think him and McNally should work quite nicely down the right hand side because Ben's a very attacking fullback and he wants to get forward. He's got a good cross on him. He's quite quick and he likes to running behind. So I think having attacking quality at wing back will be ideal.
Yeah, and again, looking at the thread, it looks like Jay potentially bombs down the wing, as you said, but he also gets to the byline quite a lot for a wing back and gets the crosses in from there. It's not something necessarily we've seen a lot of, because particularly if you look at the likes of David Ferguson and in the past Dan Dodds, etc., they do tend to cross a bit deeper into the box, whereas Jay Ben looks as though he wants to get to the byline and get a bit of a narrower crossing.
Yeah, I do think that is when you see some of the assists and if you watch any of his games, he does tend to like a lower cross and like to drill one in rather than like a big looping cross that you've seen a million times with David Ferguson. Like I think he's more of like he's like in a way he's like a winger in the way he wants to truly get right up and like hook like fully hold the width while Ferguson didn't really have the athletic ability to get that high constantly.
And Adam, was there a surprise on your end as well when he signed?
Yeah, again, like you say, it was just out the blue. Just a tweet notification come down saying we'd like to announce Jay Ben, which is always nice. Do you know what I mean? Rather than being aware in advance. But yeah, I mean, I can't offer much again. Like McNally, I think on paper it sounds great. Can't wait to see him. Hopefully it works out well, and yeah, hopefully we see a lot of good contributions from him.
And speaking of rumours, there's been a long-term rumour that has gone round about a potential striker signing. It's never come off before this season, but it has now finally bore fruit with the signing of Danny Johnson. Obviously, local lads came through the youth ranks as well, and he's been rumoured for a very long time, given the local links. And Ellis, is it a good signing?
I wouldn't put it in the same category as your McNallians and your Ben, but I do think it can be a good sign dependent on who's playing in and around him. Because Johnson he's not mobile and his all round game is pretty poor. He's not the sort of forward who's going to be like run the channels and creating stuff for himself. But at the same time, if you put him in around the box, let him stay between the posts, he will score goals. He's one of the best finishers in this league and the league above. He's really, really good in front of goal. So I think if you can get him a decent strike partner in, then I would imagine he could be a good signing, but it depends on who he's playing with.
Yeah, so it's a very much a strike partnership rather than one up front on his own, you would suggest.
Not necessarily has to be a front two, but if he's playing up front by himself, he needs some decent wingers and an attacking midfielder up close by him who are going to like be good. He needs creative players around him. He needs to be. He's not going to create the chances himself. He needs people to create the chances for him.
But you know, though, it does provide something of a contrast with what we've seen in recent years, where there are strikers who have been very selfless. They've dropped back into the midfield, they've pressed people, etc., etc. They've held the ball up, but they're not necessarily in the box when the cross goes in. We've had Manny D, who's been very good in front of goal, but he does do a lot of the work out with the ball as well, and sometimes that does mean he misses the chances going forward because either he's knackered himself, so he can't get into the box after he's pressed and held it up, or he's just not in the box. There's no one in the box. So it's good to have that poacher in the box. And as you say, as long as there are people around him, potentially it could result in, a bag full of goals for him if we play it right.
I'd like to think so. I think generally one of the best. He will be the best finisher in this league, arguably. It's just getting him in that position where he can get shots off.
Absolutely. And finally, our final signing at the moment. There will be more. There has to be more. But at the moment, Jermaine Francis was heavily rumoured for quite a while, and he has finally signed on the dotted line. He was at Barnet permanently, but went on loan to Braintree for the second half of last season, I believe. He was recalled late on, but he spent a lot of time with Braintree, scored against Pulls as well with a nice bit of play on the right-hand side, I think it was, and drilled it across the keeper. Ellis, take it away.
As I said about McNally, you want a strong core of athletes, and Francis fits into that. He's really quick, he's nippy, he works really hard, which I think instantly gives you a backbone with a decent side. But then I think he's the sort of winger we have. I mean, we've had, except for Cleary, who wasn't even playing the wing, we've not had any good wingers in recent years. And I think he's actually going to stretch teams, run the channels, be direct, which I think if you want to succeed, you need players who are going to be difference makers, and I think Francis is one. And then obviously last season, I mean, he's got experience at the level. He's a good age. He did well at the level last year. I think he's got room for improvement, but I think hopefully Grayson will be able to get the best out of him.
Certainly. And Adam, looking at Danny Johnson, Jermaine Francis, fresh names into the club. Obviously, Danny Johnson's been linked for a long time, but, your thoughts on potentially what could happen?
Yeah, DJ's been about 3 or 4 years in the making on it, so it's quite good to see that finally over the line. I was just waiting for Harry Chapman to come in next.
Well,
But not,
he could quite easily. I mean, to be fair, his injury record's comparable, so we could
but
do with another
again,
injury-prone player.
if you're signing people like Harry Chapman, I'd rather just keep Mancini.
That's
That is
That's exactly what Ellis said to me about a month or two ago.
that's just my honest opinion. I think he's better than Chapman. Do you know what I mean? It's anyway, but yeah, them last two signings. I mean, the game's not played on paper, obviously, as well we know, but on paper it looks very good. Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, 4 weeks to go between now and the start of the season. I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more movement, other players coming in, potentially players going out. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the squad takes shape. Hopefully, we get a second number 9 to go alongside DJ. But yeah, I mean, I'm just quite happily pleased with the recruitment so far. It's a good blend of youth players who can hopefully be here for years to come, grow with the club, and then also a blend of experience. Players who've obviously been in the league above, National League experience. So yeah, so far seemingly so good, despite what's going on at the club, more so off the pitch.
Ellis, we've mentioned already about a couple of positions that may need filling. We've mentioned the goalkeeper before. Obviously, we've both mentioned the number 9 to go alongside Danny Johnson, potentially another winger as well. I think we've mentioned a left centre back as well if we're going to play a back 3. Is there anything sort of that you will prioritise over the others? Is there something that you think we desperately need to replace or we need to fill?
Chairman.
Chairman. I thought Luke Chairman was all right last season.
Yeah, great.
Oh, yeah. No, but yeah, is there anything in particular you might want to say?
I'd say I think we need 6 more. I think we need new goalkeeper, a new left centre back, a new left wing back, an attacking midfielder, and 2 strikers. And I think that would put us in a decent position. Obviously, in the National League, you're not restricted by a transfer market, so you can maybe bring in another centre back on loan or something. But
yeah, I think it's the end of March or something, isn't it? You have to basically finish your business by.
Yeah, which is obviously
miles away. Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, that raises a good question actually, in terms of you just mentioned loans at the end there. And in the past, we have relied quite a bit on loans because potentially the summer signings haven't been good enough, or just to bolster the squad sort of towards the end of the season. You look at the Great Escape season 10 years ago, where Ronnie Moore made excellent use of the loan market to try and get us over the line. Is there a balance to be struck between transfers, loans? Because the accusation that gets levelled at loans quite a lot is that obviously the players don't really care. Like, not all the players care because they know they're going back to the parent clubs.
I think with loans, you've got to be there's a few attributes I think you've got to look for. I think first, you need to do a bit of research into what the character's like and how they are as a person, like you're saying, because a lot of them aren't interested. So, for example, Cleary, I think he's the perfect example. Look at when you're looking at successful lonely, is he was fighting to win a contract or a move, as we see he's went to Barnsley. So he had a point to prove it. He had personal gain from it. But if you're signing a young lad who's 18, it's his first loan, and he's still got 3 years left in his contract at Norwich or wherever we're signing him from. He's not. He doesn't really care. So I think you've got to be careful with that. The attitude. I think you've got to look at the physical attributes and how they're actually able to handle playing men's football. So like again, looking back at Cleary, he's an athlete. Like he wasn't phased by National League defenders kicking him and getting hands on with him. But if you sign some smaller lads who have less experience of playing against proper footballers, not kids, then you're gonna get they're not gonna do as well. And I think finally, I'd like to look at players who've already had loans, even if they're not necessarily been successful, but it gives them a feel for playing in men's football. You don't want to be signing players on the first loan.
Absolutely. I mean, Adam, we mentioned earlier, or you mentioned earlier, that there'll be two players in the conversation for player of the season last season, which I do agree with. But I think if Reyes Cleary had been here all season, I don't think there's any doubt that he'd probably have earned the award just outright.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ellis said earlier on in the episode, I think if it wasn't for him, his contributions at times, I think Pool's season could have been a lot worse. It's almost like he came in at the perfect time, really. I mean, you shouldn't fall in love with lone players, but you do. There was a little part of me when I saw he left West Brom. There was a little part of me like, please, please.
Joking, aren't you?
Um, what a boy can hope,
Oh, we can all hope, but it
a
was
boy
never
can
going to happen
dream.
that.
Stranger things have happened in the world of football, but no, fantastic player. Got him over Barnsley, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. But yeah,
Absolutely, good luck to him with Barnsley. And obviously, if it doesn't work out, we can make use of the loan market once again, and we're more than happy to take him back. Reyes, if you listen,
yeah.
do keep us in mind if things don't work out at Oakwell. And hopefully they do for him. To be fair, he'd say he's earned his move there, and good luck to him. And that concludes the signings portion there. As I say, hopefully there's more to come. I think the only other thing to cover in the squad area would be the upcoming, let's say, mutual passing with Joe Gray, because he hasn't signed for anyone yet, has he? He hasn't signed with us. He's been linked with about 10 different Football League clubs, including Doncaster, and he's not yet signed. It's the 10th of July. He could have signed 10 days ago, and he still hasn't. Is it the hope that kills you?
Yes,
Absolutely, it is.
I
Yeah, I
think
mean, he's not going to sign, is he?
I imagine what the whole will be is the compensation. I think
Yes.
because
Yeah.
obviously we're in. I think I don't. I'm not an expert on the compensation and all, but I think it's dependent on how many games he's played for, how long when he made his debut, how long he's been like if he's a first team regular and whatnot. And I think because obviously he has been a first team regular, and I think he got his first professional contract at 17. I think we're like in the top bracket for the compensation. I think so we'll be entitled to a decent fee. And as much as I think Joe Gray is a great player, he didn't have the best season last year, injuries and whatnot, and I think he was misused. I don't think he was. I don't think he's really a winger. I think he played everywhere. I think he played attacking midfield on the wing everywhere. I think if you can, like a lot of league clubs will be looking and going, "Out is he worth forking out six figures for?"
Which, to be fair, that's up to them. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have him down as a six-figure player at the moment. But then in the days that we're currently living in, potential gets you a lot of money, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I
You
mean,
look at the top level, and again, we're not talking about the top level either. You look at the top level, you look at these players that are going for like 60 million, 70 million or something. They are not 60 million players, but it's the fact that they're still young and they've still got, they haven't really got a low ceiling. They've got a lot of potential, and that's what you're paying for. So fingers crossed if he does end up going, Doncaster or Bradford, whoever it is that want to buy him, you know, they stump up the money for him. Otherwise, it'll be a lovely little legal tribunal, which is exactly what the club don't want at this moment in time. Just on Joe Gray, we've spoken about Danny Johnson needing someone alongside him who can do the work and put the hard yards in. I don't think any of us would disagree that Joe Gray is a hard worker when he's on the pitch. Could he potentially slot in alongside Danny Johnson if he does sign the contract?
I
is it just
think
me? I'm just not particularly bothered by the whole Joe Gray thing. Like, if he stays fantastic. But then if he goes as well, like, I'm not going to be losing sleep over it. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has got a high work ethic and stuff. But then I just think, well, you're talking about someone here with about 21 goals and 140 appearances for Poole. So, I mean, he's not terrible. I do like Joe Gray, but I also think there's better out there. Do you know what I mean? I think there'll be better players out there who can come here and output better numbers. But again, that could just be me. That's just my own opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Ellis.
I I see the viewpoint, but I think Joe Gray's not. I think like we were talking about the potential and what it can be. I think under a decent manager who actually uses him correctly, because he's been played everywhere. He's been played on either wing. He's played on like 1,000 different managers. I think if you can just get him in with consistent setup and let him play in the front two with another decent forward, would that be Danny Johnson? Maybe like not, but like whoever it may be, and I think he could really like hit that next level as we've seen. Like when he was playing in the front two with Manny, he was scoring pretty much every week at the end under Phillips, and I think, but I do agree in the way of if you're saying right, 100 grand and this 100 grand's going to get put back into our transfer budget, which it won't. But if it was the case of that, then maybe I'd say you know what, it would be a worthwhile sacrifice to get rid of Joe Gray for what it could offer the rest of the squad in the recruitment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you mentioned the goal ratio. I think it is a fair comment. He hasn't scored as many as he maybe would like. I think it also raises the point that he hasn't really been used correctly. I think he's been used on the wing quite a lot, and he's tried hard. And you can only ask that of the players where the manager has asked them to play out of position, and they're happy to do so. But if he plays in the front two, I think he would potentially thrive. And it's interesting to see how he gets on, whether that be with us or with another club. But